The mansion was a palace of glass and marble, but behind its beauty, there was a darkness no one dared to speak about. Every morning the black maid, Grace, arrived with quiet dignity, ready to work hard and provide for her family. But the billionaire she worked for, Mr. Whitmore, seemed to take pleasure in making her life difficult. His words were sharp, his orders unreasonable, and his constant criticism felt less like management and more like a game he enjoyed playing. Grace endured it in silence, holding her head high, refusing to let him see her break. But things began to change when Mr. Whitmore's only son Daniel returned from studying abroad. Unlike his father, Daniel had a warmth in his eyes and a way of treating people with respect, no matter their position. He quickly noticed the tension in the air every time Grace entered the room. At first, he thought it was just his father's usual moodiness, but soon, the truth became impossible to ignore. One morning, the situation went too far. Daniel walked into the study to find his father's voice raised, his tone cutting deep into Grace's dignity. She stood there, still and silent, but her eyes told the story of someone who had been holding back pain for far too long. Daniel felt something inside him snap before Mr. Whitmore could say another word. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between his father and the maid. What he said next would change everything. Daniel's voice was calm but firm, the kind that made people stop and listen. His father froze, surprised that his usually quiet son had stepped in. Grace lowered her eyes, unsure if she should stay or walk away. The room felt tense, as if even the air was waiting to see what would happen next. Daniel had been gone for years, studying business in London, far from the cold walls of this house. He remembered his father as a man of power, feared by many but respected in the business world. Yet seeing him now, treating someone with such disregard, felt different. It wasn't just about business, it was personal, and it was wrong. Grace had worked for the Whitmore family for nearly 5 years. She never shared much about her life, but Daniel knew she had 2 children and worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table. She was known in the staff quarters as kind, dependable, and someone who never complained, no matter how heavy the burden that made his father's constant mistreatment even harder to watch. In the days following that morning, Daniel began to pay closer attention. He noticed how Grace would arrive early, leave late, and carry out every task with care, even when met with coldness. He also saw something else. There was a history here, something unspoken, something his father wasn't telling him. The more Daniel watched, the more questions filled his mind. And deep down, he knew he was getting closer to an answer his father might not want him to find. Daniel started spending more time in the parts of the house his father rarely visited. The kitchen, the laundry room, the garden places, where the staff worked quietly in the background. It was there he began to piece together fragments of conversation, careful not to let anyone feel they were being interrogated. The staff spoke in hushed tones about the early days when Grace first arrived, hinting at an incident that had changed the way Mr. Whitmore treated her. No one said it directly, but Daniel could sense it was more than simple was personal. Grace, however, never brought it up. She remained polite, even to Mr. Whitmore, as if holding on to some silent code of honor. Daniel admired her strength, but it made him wonder why she tolerated so much. Was it loyalty? Fear? Or was there something deeper tying her to this house? Meanwhile, Mr. Whitmore noticed the shift. He didn't like the idea of his son meddling in household matters. Their conversations became strained, business dinners turning into subtle battles. Daniel would push for treating staff fairly. His father would dismiss it as idealistic thinking. Then one evening, as Daniel was leaving the study, he overheard a phone call. His father's voice was low, tense. She can't know. If she talks, everything could fall apart. Daniel froze outside the door, heart pounding. Who was his father talking about? And what secret was so dangerous it had to be hidden from Grace? That night, Daniel barely slept. The words he overheard kept replaying in his mind, each time heavier than before. She can't know. It was clear now the tension between his father and Grace wasn't just about power or pride. It was about a secret, one big enough to make a billionaire sound afraid. The next morning, Daniel found Grace in the garden, trimming roses before sunrise. Her hands moved steadily, but he noticed the faint tremor in her fingers. He almost asked her directly, but something in her expression told him she wouldn't answer, not yet. Instead, he offered to help, staying by her side longer than necessary, hoping she might open up on her own. Meanwhile, Mr. Whitmore grew colder. Toward Daniel, it wasn't just annoyance anymore, it was suspicion. At dinner, his eyes would linger on his son, measuring his words, as if trying to guess how much he already knew. The tension between them hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Then came the moment Daniel couldn't ignore. Late one evening, while passing the study, he saw his father hurriedly placing a stack of old documents into a locked drawer. He didn't notice Daniel watching from the shadows. The next day, Daniel found Grace looking pale, her usual calm replaced with quiet distress. She had just been in the study. Something had happened. Something his father didn't want anyone to find out, and Daniel knew the next step he took could change everything for him, for Grace, and for the Whitmore family. The following afternoon, Daniel returned home earlier than usual. The house was strangely quiet, the kind of silence that makes you feel you've stepped into the wrong place. He went looking for Grace, but she wasn't in the kitchen, the garden, or the laundry room. Finally, he heard muffled voices coming from the old guest wing and area no one used anymore. Moving closer, he recognized his father's voice, sharp and low. The second voice made him freeze. It wasn't Grace, it was a man he'd never heard before. Their words were urgent, tense, as if they were sealing some kind of deal. "You said this was handled years ago," the man hissed. "It was until she came back into the picture," his father replied. "If she finds out the truth about her connection to this family, everything will collapse." Daniel's chest tightened. Her connection to this family? He thought of Grace, of her years of silent endurance, of the unspoken history she never shared. Was she tied to them in a way neither of them had been told? Before he could hear more, the voices stopped, and footsteps came toward the door. Daniel ducked behind a cabinet, heart pounding, as the stranger walked past him and disappeared down the hall. That night, Grace avoided eye contact with Daniel entirely, as if she had been warned or threatened. The air between them was thick, with secrets, and Daniel realized the truth wasn't just buried, it was being actively protected. And whoever that stranger was, he wasn't finished yet. The tension finally broke one stormy evening. Daniel came home to raised voices echoing from the study. He rushed in to find his father standing across from Grace, a folder of documents clutched in his hand. Her usually calm face was streaked with tears, but her voice was steady. "You can't keep this from me forever," she said. "I deserve to know." Daniel stepped forward. "What's going on?" Mr. Whitmore's grip on the folder tightened. "This has nothing to do with you, Daniel. It has everything to do with me," Daniel shot back. "If this is about Grace, I want the truth now." For a long moment, the room was silent except for the rain hammering against the windows. Finally, Mr. Whitmore's shoulders sagged. He opened the folder and placed it on the desk. Inside were old birth certificates, letters, and photographs. The truth hit Daniel like a blow. Grace wasn't just an employee. She was the daughter of his father's late business partner, a man betrayed in a deal that built the Whitmore empire. Her family had been left with nothing, and she had taken the job in the mansion not just to survive, but to uncover proof of what had happened. Daniel turned to his father, anger and disbelief in his eyes. But before he could speak, the door creaked open. The same stranger from the guest wing stepped inside, smirking. "Interesting," he said. "Now that all the secrets are out, shall we talk about my claim to this family?" The stranger stepped fully into the room, his eyes fixed on Mr. Whitmore. "I'm your half-brother," he said, his tone calm but edged with years of resentment. "And I know exactly how you built your fortune." Daniel looked between them, stunned. Grace's expression shifted from shock to understanding. Pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The betrayal wasn't just toward her family, but toward his own as well. Mr. Whitmore's face went pale. For the first time, Daniel saw not the powerful billionaire, but a man cornered by the truth. The stranger laid down his own folder of documents, proof that could destroy the Whitmore name if made public. The room was silent until Daniel stepped forward. "Then it's time to fix this. All of it." He turned to Grace. "You deserve what was taken from your family, and this house needs to be built on honesty, not lies." In the days that followed, the truth came out quietly, but completely. Grace received her rightful share from the business her father helped create, enough to secure her children's future. The stranger chose to walk away, his silence bought not with money, but with a promise to make things right in the company. Daniel and Grace remained in contact, bound now by truth rather than